probably it. Perfect.
Hi, welcome to YogaRocks Box. I'm here again with Gösta. We're going to talk a little bit about where yoga comes from and the origins of this practice. So,
Wow.
Gus, tell us a little bit about where yoga originates from.
Wow, you guys sit down because that's a long one. The old scriptures of the Vedas, which many people attribute to India, is really not at all scriptures from India. They are from somewhere, maybe the northern part of the Middle East, probably Persia, that was not named Persia, maybe even Afghanistan, somewhere around there. And as people were traveling from the west to the east over the Silk Route, we cross pollinate each other. So actually the Vedas, that is how I came to understand it, the Vedas actually traveled eastwards and made it to northern India and became a blend culture with the South Indian ancient culture called the Harappa civilization. And that over, I don't know how long, but obviously a long time, became a blend culture that we now understand as, let's say, the Hindu tradition. Notice that there are no Hindus because the tradition is called Sanatan Dharma, or the eternal law of righteousness, not as we understand righteousness as in this really negative connotation of what a righteous ... I'll try not to swear. Yoga is truly derived, as we understand yoga, as a practice or a state of oneness, a state of oneness with everything that seems to be surrounding us, is basically derived from the ancient scriptures of the Vedas. So if it's an Indian tradition is also debatable. The Vedas, since yoga, let's just call it yoga for now, since the yoga tradition was an oral tradition, which means there was a teacher, guru, swami, whatever, acharya, and then there were students, and they were actually supposed to pay attention, soak it up. They were not allowed, since it was an oral tradition, not allowed to take notes. If you try to read the Vedas, if you would be interested, then you notice that most of the Vedas, Veda means knowledge, truly it means wisdom. None of the Vedas are actually really either easy to understand or have been finished whatsoever. As the student, years later or generations later, they tried to hold on to the teaching and they were starting to write it down. But also, you color what you have memorized, and you try to write down and you go like, oh, what was it exactly? Many of the Vedas were not even finished. Yoga is claimed to be derived from the Vedas and the scriptures that were later trying to explain the Vedas, like the Puranas, for instance, very important. The Upanishads, very important. The Upanishads are very short little stories, sometimes verses, and they, let's say, explain the Vedas and our tradition of understanding there is only union, or actually coming to the feeling that there is only oneness. That would be yoga. I think the most easy to understand, if there is anything easy to understand, would be the scripture of Patanjali, which is now known as Raja Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, not to be mistaken with the practice of the series of Ashtanga Vinyasa, but Ashtanga Yoga, and it reflects to 8 steps, an 8-step plan that you don't have to practice as a plan. You finish one step, you go up to the next. And yoga there in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is best described, and I would say that is actually really the origin of yoga as we understand it today. Is that the ancient form? No, not at all. You sometimes hear people who practice Ashtanga Vinyasa, the stuff from Mysore, from Krishnamacharya. They say, and it makes me laugh, like, yeah, I practice this ancient practice, and they don't realize that the scripture of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is dated at the same time when Buddha came to the conclusion of the Four Noble Truths and the 8-step plan afterwards. as Buddha, the historical Buddha, Gautama the Buddha, Siddhartha, he lived at the same time, somewhere 500 before Jesus Christ, dated, and Patanjali is also dated at the same time, and they were both living, traveling around Kashi, which was later called Varanasi, and that is Benares, and now Varanasi, and that is really the city where yoga was studied. If you would ever go to Varanasi, the city of the dead, this is where traditional people would like to leave their material body, because it said that there you would go back into the union that always was. What is interesting to see is that both Buddha, who actually did the first churning of the wheel, this is like the original teaching of Buddha. Varanasi is on this side of the Ganga river, of the Ganges, and Sarnath, where the so-called first churning of the wheel, the first teaching of Buddha was, it's a village right across. Many people of the yoga interested people, they somehow make it eventually to Varanasi, the city where Shiva lives, let's say, where we blend back to universal cosmic consciousness, and they forget to just take the ferry across the river and understand that their Buddha came up with basically an identical plan. I would say that would be the real origin of modern yoga as we understand it. If you would look back to going further back in time, then the oldest tradition of yoga as I understand it, it's only what I understand, is Tantra yoga. And Tantra yoga is worship of the divine quality of the mother, and the mother is seen as anything that manifests in the vacuum of consciousness. And now you're at the principle of male, female, black, white. Patanjali describes his Yoga Sutras very interesting, because it is far more than just a philosophical hippie kind of way of finding liberation. If you really read the Yoga Sutras well, Patanjali describes there are two entities. There is Purusha, that the yogis would describe as Shiva, and Hindus would say Brahman. Patanjali says there is the source of everything. Quantum physics says a state of singularity, or the absolute nothingness. We're just talking words now. And within this state of consciousness, Shiva, Brahman, singularity, there was a so-called first moving. You can make it very religious, you can make it very spiritual, and you can just look at it as a way of science, and that's how I like to make my interpretation. There was once nothing, and in that state of condensed nothingness, everything was once compressed together. This is what quantum physics calls the theory, Einstein, of entanglement. And entanglement means that the electrons in your body that make up your so-called manifest body, those electrons are also in my body and in his body and also across the universe. And the beauty is, and this is that state of oneness that is still there. There is an experiment, the entanglement experiment, and the Chinese, they have an entanglement satellite cruising around our planet, so no longer in our electromagnetic field, where they have one electron, and there is one electron outside of our electromagnetic field of the Earth, and if you would change your electron, and the other electron changes instantly. This is what Einstein called, he's the one who figured it out, and Einstein said this is what did he call it? Spooky action at the distance, something like that. It was unexplainable how one particle changes here, and in theory the other entangled particle could be right across the other side of our universe, and it would change instantly. That either means there is no time, which there isn't, time is irrelevant, and there is no space. And that means actually that what we see as a state of separation, as this man is filming, the electrons in his body are at the same time superimposed in my body, and as he changes, mine change instantly. This is basically the whole idea of yoga, that we are completely one single unit, but since I call myself I cannot be you. So now I have separated myself only on an intellectual level. There's Purusha, source, and then there is Prakriti, nature, the things that come and go, that seem to be solid, but yeah, they are just an illusion of mind. Beautiful. We use, you probably know that, like when you sit in a yoga class and they tell you to have this symbol, this is it. The source, or absolute nothing, and the three qualities, or what we call gunas, the three states, qualities of manifestation. Rajas, too much, you could identify it as plus. You got tamas, you could identify it as the zero, minus, too little. And then you have the balancing or harmonizing quality within the expression of manifestation. So too much, too little, just right. And our practice and the food that we would use would be the food of sattva, the holing and holistic quality of oneness. So next time, Jnana Mudra, seal of ultimate yogic wisdom or quantum wisdom. So you can date it back very much. You can go all the way back to the Vedas. It is unexplainable. It is incomprehensible. You can